Welcome back. Normally at this time of day, I'm doing my treadmill for roughly an hour, but since I'm not feeling physically well, which I think I don't know if I'm actually not physically. I think it's sympathy because I know my wife's not feeling well today, so I'm not sure. But either way, I'm not feeling well either. At any rate, here I am talking about the wrestling industry and all that. And I wanted to start off with the Maxine Dupree story that's out there. Now I've watched Maxine Dupree on Raw. I mean, obviously, recently I saw an episode of SmackDown in person. I was surprised at some of the botches I saw in that. I think on TV they cover them up as well as they can, but yeah, when you're there live, you notice things maybe you don't on TV because they're really good at hiding that stuff. But the storyline with Maxine Dupree is that she's learning, which is good as a storyline. We should not be witnessing the learning process. So she got booed heavily by some fans. It wasn't everybody. It sounds like it was some fans in attendance who got kind of obnoxious. And so when that video surfaced, Rhea Ripley came out and defended her. Becky Lynch has come out and defended her. And a lot of people have. And I'm sure she's a great person. I'm sure she's doing her best. But the actual wrestling training, that's kind of what NXT is there for. And so you could have her as their manager. Absolutely. You can have her come out and all of that. And in terms of the narrative that she's learning, you could throw her into a match here and there with like your local enhancement talent and just use those as like the stepping stones. I think the mistake they've made is putting her in the ring with people who are talented and kind of over. And it really shows that from a wrestling standpoint, she's very green, she's very raw, and she may end up being a very good wrestler. That may very well be the case. I've seen the comparisons between her and Eva Marie. I think the reason that people are more ready to come to the defense of Maxine than they were for Eva Marie is it always felt like Eva Marie just wanted to be famous more than she wanted to be a wrestler. And whether that was the case or it wasn't, that's how it came across. That's how I think a lot of fans perceived it. And so it made it so we as fans never accepted Eva Marie. I never bought it. I never bought her as a wrestler. I was like, you're where you're at because you're very good looking. I thought she was okay on the microphone. So again, maybe she could have been a good manager, but as a wrestler, it wasn't there. Not everybody's meant to do it. And there's no shame in that. It is a very difficult craft to perfect, and even if you've perfected it, you're still going to have mistakes. You're still going to have things happen in matches that shouldn't or normally don't, and people are going to see it. But fans have always had the right to call it out. I know I was at a house show in Vancouver where Lita was mercilessly booed by the crowd, and she was supposed to be a face. And she came out and she cut this promo in the ring and they booed. And there was a guy yelling from behind me that she's terrible on the microphone. She needs to get out of the ring. Shut up. And you could see that it was flustering Lita, that she was out there. She's supposed to be the sympathetic baby face. And the crowd just wasn't having it. They wanted wrestling. They didn't want whatever drama was going on with Lita. And so, yeah, she kind of got booed out of the ring. And I could see she was genuinely thrown off. I don't know that she was necessarily upset, like she wasn't crying or anything, but you could see that it threw her off. Now, if we'd been in an age then that we are now, that clip would have gone live online, and people would have been very upset about how Lita was talked to by certain members of the crowd in Vancouver. And I don't know if that's an improvement in where we are as wrestling fans, or if it's a sign that, I mean, it's called heat for a reason. So you can pivot. Like eventually with Lita, WWE had to pivot and make her a heel and team her up with Edge because she wasn't going to get over as a babyface anymore. It just wasn't going to happen. In Maxine's case, she needs time. She needs time. She needs to be wrestling against people who are not at an experience level that's so much higher than her, and they're not more over than she is. So I understand the wrestlers coming to her defense. I also understand, I totally understand why fans would go to a house show and boo a wrestler for a poor performance. I wouldn't do it personally, but I can totally understand why fans would do that. So it does, I think it shows how things have changed when it comes to wrestling. Because, yeah, that wouldn't have even been a story 20 years ago. 20 years ago, if it was, well, this baby face got booed in this location, it would have been, and yeah, they were yelling at them. And so it really feels like maybe this is just wrestlers have decided they're not taking that. But again, fans pay for a ticket. They have a right to voice their displeasure. No line was crossed here. I don't see anything where anybody threw anything at her. Nothing about personal insults that I've heard either. Just that they felt she sucked. It was a bad match and they booed her out of the building for it. Which, again, I don't blame her for. I think it's on the fact that WWE is insisting on this learning process in front of the camera. What's interesting is AEW has the exact same thing happen in their matches. Sky Blue comes to mind as somebody that the first time I saw her in AEW, I was like, okay, she's got the look, she's got something there that's unique and could make her a star. But boy, was she rough to watch in the ring. Now, over the last couple of years, she's really honed that character, and she's got a lot better in the ring. But AEW fans seem to be more understanding of that learning curve because there's no developmental. At least that's my theory. My theory is there's no developmental in AEW. You have AEW Dark and you have, the way you work yourself up. But in general, there is not a developmental territory, so to speak, where you can work on all of that. Like if they had a situation where they could go to OVW and say, look, we'll send you these 5 wrestlers we think they need work, I think Al Snow would jump on that and maybe come up with new gimmicks for wrestlers and help them learn more about the basics of it and all of that. But honestly, it feels like the crowd in AEW is more understanding of mistakes when they happen. The one thing that I do get concerned with wrestlers I've talked about before, which is the amount of risks they take in the ring now compared to, again, 20 years ago. Now, I will say there's a caveat, a little bit of an asterisk with that. The unprotected chair shots to the head. If you're watching a match from 25 years ago, there's a lot of unprotected chair shots to the head, and it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable watching these wrestlers just take absolute, just awful hits directly to the skull, that there's no way that it wouldn't give them some form of concussion. And knowing what we know now, we even knew then, we understood in the late 90s that concussions were a thing and maybe try to avoid them. And so some of these shots that wrestlers will give and take, because the wrestler getting that headshot knows it's coming and is agreeing to keep their hands down rather than protect, because unprotected chair shot means you don't even put your hands up. If you watch a wrestling match, usually where a guy's swinging at the head, the wrestler will bring his hands up so his hands get hit rather than the head. It's the same thing when they go into the corner post. It's the same thing with a lot of things where they'll protect themselves. There are moments in a wrestling match where I will genuinely wince because I know they're not able to protect themselves. There's no way that move didn't hurt. And if it was incorrectly delivered or received even a little bit, it could mean massive trouble. You look at Big E hurt by Ridge Holland, and in a move that, as much as you could say it was reckless, it was also just a wrestling move that we've seen a lot, and it made it so Big E broke a neck and likely will never wrestle again. So there's an inherent danger to the entire craft that now I don't think it's as acute as it was then, but it does feel like some of the dives that are being done, combined with the fact that some of these wrestlers don't have the experience level that you would want for wrestlers to be taking that level of risk. I do have concerns about just how many guys are going to get hurt as a result of that. There's been a storyline online, at least, not on TV, but online, talking about AEW and how reckless they can be in the ring. I know Jim Cornette talks a lot about it. But there's a lot of dives in WWE as well. I know when we went to SmackDown, I told Yvonne, I said, yeah, everybody's going to dive out of the ring. Here comes the dive. And what throws me off with the dive is you are pausing the match. So you can run the ropes, dive through the ropes. The other wrestler has to catch you. So everybody kind of takes their spots, and then you run the dive through the ropes. it's a move that no longer has any impact for me. I remember it used to, before we had all the high flying stuff, it used to mean something. When a guy dove out of the ropes to get to somebody else, he was really angry. And it was a sign that this fight was out of control. Now it's just part of the match. DDT, just part of the match. DDT, that used to be, it's over. It's over. That's it. It's death, destruction, termination. That's what DDT stands for. And now it's just a move. DDT, 1, 2, and kick out. Pile driver, 1, 2, and kick out. It's so weird how wrestling has changed, and I don't know if it's any safer, because again, you've got wrestlers going out there who are not that experienced, and the moves that they're going through now, ones that used to be finishers no longer are. So you have to make it more spectacular. It has to be more spectacular finish. Just imagine if real fighting worked that way. It doesn't. So I'm not sure why wrestling feels like it has to one-up itself. And again, AEW takes all the criticism for it. WWE does it too. Like, there's no shortage of guys taking huge risks and potentially, dislocating their shoulder, their knees, whatever else. Maybe they don't take as many risks as AEW, but it's still there. So I wanted to weigh in on this topic because I do find it interesting that there are so many wrestlers who are green, learning the craft, who are in against wrestlers who are very experienced, or as I said, very over. So, yeah, I think Maxxine should be in NXT, and I'm not saying that as an insult. That's what it's there for. At least that's what NXT is supposed to be there for, is for wrestlers to, work on their craft, work on their character, and then move their way up. Jade Cargill should be down right now in NXT every week, dominating. She should be down there and doing that. I know there's a lot of investment there, but build her up in NXT. And not only that, show what she's doing on Raw and SmackDown. Be like, Jade Cargill's decided to destroy the women's division in NXT, and she's going one by one, and she doesn't care if they're who they are. So she could be destroying faces and heels, go through the whole roster, and just in that, she's developing her character further. She's learning the wrestling further. And then when she comes back up to Raw or SmackDown, there's a big... In fact, you could have where both GMs are fighting for her. You could have Nick Aldis saying, I want you over here on SmackDown. Adam Pearce saying, we want you on Raw. And have the two of them. You could... And they're both Pearce and Aldis have had wrestling backgrounds. They could get in the ring and have a wrestling match where the winner gets Jade Cargill on their show. Sure. And you could throw that on an episode of Raw or SmackDown. You could have that as a dark match for a pay-per-view, like your free match, right? And I think that could work. But again, I think they brought Jade in and they thought she was further along than she was. AEW protected her so well. She'd come out, she'd wrestle for a few minutes. Basically, it was the Goldberg treatment. She'd come out, she'd beat people up and leave. And when it gets into the actual technical side of it, she's not quite there, which is okay. But again, it gets exposed at the WWE level. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about that, see what other people think about how to develop. Maybe this is just a development thing, and we're starting to see fans rebelling against the product because wrestlers just aren't being developed very well. Like, we were spoiled back in the 80s. 9 times out of 10, if Vince had a guy brought in on TV, and I'd be like, I never heard of this guy before, because I didn't follow all the territories. It'd be somebody who's been wrestling for like 15 years, been through the territories, been through all the indies. And so, yeah, no big deal. And they'd be on TV, and their wrestling would be seamless. You didn't have green wrestlers on WWE programming back in the 80s very often. So... I mean, it happened, but nowhere near as often. And usually if it was somebody who was really green, it was a celebrity or it was a short-term run for somebody, that kind of thing. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event that you've not done so already. And how do you feel about the state of pro wrestling currently? I think that both AEW and WWE are putting out a quality product. I liked Elimination Chamber. I actually watched it the other day. Even though I knew what the results were going to be, I enjoyed it. I thought the men's match was actually really entertaining. I got a real kick out of some of the Kevin Owens spots in that. I thought the brass knuckles bit was done really, really well, and I thought it was done in a way that you couldn't see it coming. Not necessarily, anyways. Like, again, it's easy to get distracted from the fact that Logan Paul's still laying there, and they did frame it so that they didn't show very often Logan Paul was still laying there, but I thought they did that well, and I thought they set up future feuds really well too. But let me know your thoughts on the whole state of wrestling thing. I find it so weird that there's moves that wrestlers don't do anymore. It's so bizarre. So when you see an atomic drop, you're like, where did that come from? Yeah, they should still be doing. There's some moves they should still be at least doing once in a while. I understand an atomic drop could hurt. I understand your tailbone could be hurt with that too, but yeah, there's some moves there that you don't see in wrestling anymore that are relatively safe, but don't look safe. And that's the key, is to make sure you're protecting your wrestlers. Your product is as safe as it can possibly be, and for people in the crowd, they believe there's real peril, right? Real peril, and they get emotionally invested. That's important. But again, be interested to know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys for your support. It means so much. I will talk to you again soon.